Hello, all my book people. Happy October. I hope it is off to a great and cozy start for you. September was a really awesome month here with my family. We got to celebrate our anniversary down at Disney for the first time as a family of 3. And that was just super special. Me and my husband used to be cast members down there. And so to be able to take our daughter was just so precious. Even with our trip and just the busyness that I had at my own place of employment, I still was able to read 10 books this month, which was just so much fun. So I'm going to just kick off my September reading wrap up. To start us off, I'm going to put up some of my graphics as a new feature that they are currently using. If you're not on Storygraph, I highly recommend it. I was on Goodreads for a really long time, but Storygraph just allows you to do so much more with your stats, and even with like tags. There's just a lot of great features, so highly recommend it. I've linked mine down below if you want to be friends on there. Love all my book friends, so please come and join me over there. But I'm going to just kind of pop up some graphs and stats that they generate and talk through those for a moment. Okay, so I am jumping over to Storygraph just to go through some of my stats, and I thought I would just share my screen and go through like what you would see if you had a Storygraph account. There are some things that are not applicable to how I read though, and I'll kind of mention that as I go down. So as we go down, I did read 10 books this month here. Average time to finish is not accurate because sometimes, almost always, I do not update when I start a book because a lot of them are audio and I sometimes will do a whole day and just listen to a book. So average time to finish not there. However, the moods are quite fun. Mysterious, we have adventurous, and dark as my biggest highs of the chart. And I think that is totally indicative of the books that I got to read, and I can't wait to share with you what those were in a little bit. The pacing, I think this is fun to see because I definitely lean towards a more medium-paced book. The slow pacing is probably the one nonfiction I read this month, and then fast. I'm not 100% sure. I wonder what my fast pacings were. Ooh, that checks out. As I scroll down, audio book length I think is a fun one to look at because most of my books are over 8 hours. And so it's fun to see that reflected on this little graph. And then something I love about Storygraph is the fact that you can like do tags. I do this because I have very specific reading goals. And some of those are I'm trying to read like a certain amount of recent releases, and I'm trying to read more authors that are new to me. So you can kind of see where recent releases, I had 3 arcs. I'm doing that so it's a really easy way for me to identify which ones I read that are arcs, which ones are rereads. Just as a really easy way for me to identify like what are rereads and what aren't. And then we have the first read by author, which is I've never read a book before by this author, which is a really fun just stat for myself. And then read aloud for Vi, that's my daughter, Violet, and it's just a fun, easy way for us to count that book because it does count. We did read it. It isn't just like a picture book flip through, it's like an actual small chapter book, and I do want to count it because it is a fun thing that we're doing, and it's a way for me to track like the bigger books that we're reading for her. And as we go down, this does not surprise me, the audio versus print. I am an audiobook girly, as I mentioned in my newbie tag. Star ratings, I'm going to skip over that because that's mostly ARC stuff. And then this is just kind of a layout of what I did, but as I said before, I don't really update when I start. So it's fun to see though, like, okay, these are when I at least finished books. So you can kind of see like where my peaks and valleys were there. So another great thing about Storygraph is if you want to share it on social media, they have a way to generate the graphics, which I have already done in this tab, and you can share it. There's like a summary. Yeah, I did 10 books, this many pages, this many hours. The reason I don't use this is because I don't, I don't use the star rating, so it's kind of hard to utilize this fully for me specifically. But I do think it's a fun peek. So yeah, that's just how I've been using Storygraph and just a fun quick peek at my stats and what I read. Now to just kind of keep me straight as I'm going through these books, I do have my iPad here, so that's what I'm looking at because there's some funny titles. I sometimes am that reader that just kind of reads a book and I don't always remember the title, but I do remember how it makes me feel. And I can give you a general idea of the plot most of the time. So I do have my iPad just to kind of help me stay organized. So of those 10 books, books that I just will not be reviewing at all, there's 3. Two of them are Nancy Drew books. One was The Phantom of Nantucket, and the other was The Grey Fox Inn. These are the newer Nancy Drew style books. They're great and cute if you do like that kind of stuff, but as this doesn't really fit to the audience that I feel like will be watching these videos, I'm not really going to review them. They are books that me and my husband like to read aloud to our daughter at night. It's kind of our part of trying to teach her a love of books. Hopefully she loves to read as much as we do. So that's just a part of it, and those are two of the books that we read in September. And the third is Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. This is a nonfiction book, so I don't really plan on reviewing nonfiction books in this space unless there's like a dedicated video on that, or unless it's like a memoir, but I just don't feel like that is going to be my niche of book reviewing. And then for my rereads, I had 2 rereads this month, which is kind of sometimes low depending on the month. Sometimes I have several rereads, but this month I only had 2 for September, and that was Good as Dead, which is the 3rd installment of the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I binged the TV show version that came out recently, and I loved that series. I am still waiting to find a mystery series that lives up to that for me. I think Holly Jackson did a phenomenal job writing a character that becomes progressively morally gray and has to wrestle with real things, and there's real life consequences, and it's just so good. And I know it's not for everyone, but for me it just hits all the check marks, so I was really excited to reread it. And the audio version is just really well done. And then my other reread was Twilight. It is Hoa Hoa season, as my husband likes to call it, and Twilight is just a bad good time. I love it. It's got that nostalgia for me. I don't think it's like a great work of literature, but at the same time it is, because like it enthralled so many people, and I love it. Like it's a reread that this time of year I love to reread it, or I love to rewatch the show, whatever I'm feeling. I enjoy it. So that was a reread this month. Now, I will be going more in depth with my ARC reviews in an upcoming video. I just only had 2 ARC books that I was able to get to this month, and so I would like to keep them a little bit separate, because the way I review them versus books that I'm just reading is different. Because for me, ARCs are a way to market a book for an author, and especially like debut authors. I just think that they need the star ratings, and it just helps readers know what is for them and what isn't. So I do like star review ARCs, so I will do a separate video, all to say. But my 2 ARCs that I did read this month was The Serial Killer Guide to San Francisco by Michelle Chouinard. Yes. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was dark and intriguing. The title totally grasped me, but there were some pacing things that I didn't love. And then the second was Before We Were Us by Denise Hunter. This was a slow burn romance that I gave 3.75 stars. Very sweet, very emotional, good romance. Like I said, I'll be going a little bit further in detail with those reviews later and telling you a little bit more what they're about. Now, my more in-depth reviews for September, these are books that weren't rereads, weren't ARCs, and weren't things that I read aloud to my 8-month-old. So I'm gonna dive on in to those. So the first was When Among Crows. Description for this book was: we bear the sword, and we bear the pain of the sword. Pain is Dimitri's calling. His family is one in a long line of hunters who sacrifice their souls to slay monsters. Now he's tasked with a deadly mission: find the legendary witch Baba Yaga. To reach her, Dimitri must ally with the ones he's sworn to kill. Pain is Allah's inheritance. A fear-eating Zamora with little left to lose, Allah awaits death from the curse she carries. When Dimitri offers her a cure in exchange for her help, she has no choice but to agree. Together they must fight against time and the wrath of the Chicago underworld, but Dimitri's secrets and his true motives may be the thing that actually destroys them. Very ooh la. This was a recommendation from Carrie Can Read. I will link her in the description, but if you're on BookTube, you probably know who I'm talking about. Yes. So I read that, And my thoughts on this is a really fun, fast-paced supernatural read. It gave me all the fall vibes I was looking for. I really was searching for books to get me in the fall mood this last month, and I feel like my reading kind of reflects that, even my rereads. And this definitely was checking that box for me. The only thing is, I do wish it was a tad longer. That's a similar thing that Carrie said. And I 100% agree. Like, I typically am in a similar mindset of, I think books can cut some of their stuff. This one, I feel like things could be a little bit more fleshed out. It was a very quick read. But it was good, and I really did enjoy it. And I do think that it became a little predictable once you got to a certain point. I kind of guessed the ending pretty early on. But like, that's not a deal breaker for me always. So I really think this book would be for you if you love a good supernatural story with a touch of Slavic folklore and don't mind a bit of predictability, and want something a bit darker and more mature. This is definitely an adult read. I would not classify this anywhere near young adult. And if you're not really in for more darker themes, I don't know if I would necessarily recommend this. But as always, especially with darker and more mature books, check the trigger warnings. And then my other two books to round out books 9 and 10 that I am talking through today was Ninth House and Hellbent. This is a part of a series, and I will not be reading the book description for Hellbent, as it would give some spoilers as to what happens in Ninth House, and I do want this to be as spoiler-free as possible. So I'm just going to be reading the book description for Ninth House, but kind of reviewing them together. Galaxy, or Alex Stern, is the most unlikely member of Yale's freshman class. Raised in the Los Angeles hinterlands by a hippie mom, Alex dropped out of school early and into a world of shady drug dealer boyfriends, dead-end jobs, and much, much worse. By age 20, in fact, she is the sole survivor of a horrific, unsolved multiple homicide. Some might say she's thrown her life away, but at her hospital bed, Alex is offered a second chance to attend one of the world's most elite universities on a full ride. What's the catch, and why her? Still searching for answers to this herself, Alex arrives in New Haven, tasked by her mysterious benefactors with monitoring the activities of Yale's secret societies. These 8 windowless tombs are well known to be the haunts of the future rich and powerful, ranging from Jodie Foster to George W. Bush. But their occult activities are revealed to be more sinister and more supernatural than any paranoid imagination might conceive. Dun dun dun. It's very much what goes off in my head when I read kind of like these suspensey type books. My thoughts on this was, oh my gosh, the dark academia vibes. Like, this is the book that actually hit that for me. There's not a ton of like in class or any. I don't even know if, no, I don't know. I can't remember. It was a good time. It definitely checked the dark academia vibes, but I don't know if there was a ton of like in class, like being on Yale's campus. It was very a part of Yale's campus. Like, oh, it just gave it all. There were a bunch of messy characters, which I love. A very eerie atmosphere that was totally engaging. So loved that. And I do think that this can be for a lot of readers, but there are some serious trigger warnings with this. I do not recommend going into this book blind in terms of warnings. There are some really heavy things, and I think if you were in the wrong mindset going into this, it could be really rough for you. It's fantastically written. It's Leigh Bardugo. She is the author of Six of Crows, the Shadow and Bone trilogy. This is her dark academia adult stuff. It is very triggering. So please take that warning if you decide to go into this book. There is another book coming out, and I read both Ninth House and Hellbent, and I was like, oh, there's another book? I thought it was a duology. Don't know why I thought there was a duology. There's literally nowhere that says it's that, but, you know, I just went in thinking it was a duology. So disappointed, because I got the end of Hellbent, and I was like, excuse me? What's happening here? So I do recommend it if you like dark and eerie, if you can handle trigger warnings, and you're also okay with a very back and forth kind of timeline. That did get a little confusing a few times, but if you struggle with timelines being not chronological, especially in ninth house. This might be a little bit of a harder read. But that is a wrap on my September reads. Please tell me what you read this past month. I love good recommendations. Tell me what your favorite was. Tell me what your least favorite was. Or if you've read any of these books, especially the ones that I reviewed, if you have similar thoughts or some different perspectives, I'd love to hear those. And don't forget to like and subscribe and, the YouTubey things. I have more bookish content coming soon. I hope to be posting weekly. That is a tall order though, but I'm putting it here for accountability, just because I love talking about books. This is so much fun for me. So I hope you want to stick around for the ride, and if not, that's also okay. I will see you on the next one.